Now, to end our discussion of positioning the body, I wanted to show you some renderings that are already completed and to talk a little bit about how the body was used and how the characters communicated in the renderings that we're seeing there. So let me go down here. I should have some figures already open for us. Here's a character. This is the widow from All's Well That Ends Well. We can see from her body positioning that, first of all, she's center in her paper, not too far on the left, not too far on the right, that she is in flow. She is kind of in the middle of her progression, or she's just a very centered character. But look how closed off she is clothes-wise, how her head, because of what she's got on her head, she can't think very well, and she's not sure what she believes up here because she can't. She's too confused with what's going on there. She is somewhat protective of her heart region, and she's a little confused about her heart and her sexual desires just a little bit because her hand's in between there and protective of that area, even guarding herself with that apron. So does that make sense as you look at her as a character, that she's somewhat protective and very pulled in and covered up and doesn't communicate well? Here is, from the Merry Wives of Windsor, Dame Quickly, who is quite the opposite kind of character, very open to her audience. So her hands are very far away from her body. Her hands are on her hips in a very masculine, almost sexual position. And she's also got this apron, but hers is open and bellowing out and letting you in. She's almost taunting you with what she believes, almost daring you to question what she believes. And her apron's kind of fun because while it does protect her between her heart and her sexual region, kind of flows in between there. Notice how it's dropped down enough that her heart is revealed. And even her collar, that could be a protection, is only tied on and therefore not really the protection it can be. So what she believes in her heart is something she's going to just keep spilling out, and she does as a character. She's constantly revealing herself and always telling you what she thinks. And she has something on her head too, not unlike the last character did. But while the last character had something on her head that almost confined her and weighed her down, because it also carries into her neck, and so she's all wrapped up, Dame Quickly's is, there's still a division between her head and her heart. So she knows what she believes and she knows what she thinks. And while she still has that piece, it's transparent and you can kind of see through it. And her little spit curls stick out. And so we know that she's going to let you know what she thinks, and she's not covering all that stuff up. She's pretty much in control. She also has gathered sleeves. It's almost give you the feeling that she's pushed her sleeves up and she is ready to fight and ready to do what she needs to do. Foundation-wise, she's a very interesting character. She has a wide stance, so we know she's a strong character, and she's kind of balanced between them, though she's kind of off one foot and onto the other foot. So there's a little fiery nature there inside. But her dress and her apron are short enough that her foundation, while it's wide, is not completely to the fore and doesn't give her the strong, complete foundation. She's a lot more active as a character, a little more flowy. This is Masha from the Three Sisters. The first thing we might notice about her, which was identical to this character, is the fact that they're facing the wrong direction, that they are a little more defiant, as opposed to this character who is what her body is a little bit defiant, but her head's turned back the other way and a little more receiving. She's a little more confused about what she really believes. But both of these characters tell us that they are now they just are against the flow. They are doing what they want to do. Particularly in Masha, because of her costume, she is covered up from her neck all the way to the floor. Her dress gives her a stronger foundation. We can't tell if her feet are wide or not. Her dress does that for us, and so she has a fairly strong foundation. But she's very protective of her heart and her sexual region, and that's a great way of describing Masha as a character. Hand-wise, we see that from the backside, her hand that's upstage, that there is sexual interest there, that she as a character is open to a relationship, but a little hesitant, because her left hand does suggest that there's a little bit of camouflaging of that heart and what she really truly believes. Her head is completely revealed, which makes her open and vulnerable intellectually, and she's going to have intellectual discussions. We could have given her a hat, we could have given her a scarf, we could have done something to cover her head. So she's not like these other characters, somewhat covered up in her head region, and perhaps some of these people are covered up because it's part of their period. Women weren't allowed to intellectualize, women weren't allowed to tell you what they really believed. But in Masha's house, she's able to say what she wants to say, though her hair covers her a little bit and shows that she's a little bit befuddled, perhaps in her thoughts, because it's not pulled back and severe. Now, if we look at the character of Mimi from La Boheme, we get a little different feeling. First of all, there's extra pictures on here. Let's just look at the picture on the left. The other two are to give us more costume information, the cut of the dress in the back, so a little jacket she's going to add, a bonnet she's going to add. So we're more interested in her as a character. Notice how she is going with the flow and has revealed herself, opened herself completely to us. One thing I've also discovered in drawing characters is if characters face the audience, they tend to be open and true characters, honest and forthwith in what they're trying to say. Characters who turn away from the audience are a little less revealing, and the more they turn away, the more secretive they seem to be to us as characters. So she's very open and innocent. She's covered all the way to the neck, not unlike Masha, who before we had, but all covered in one color. She is covered in lace, and she's tied up as a string, so she is closed off intellectually and in her heart region. And she's even got a hand up from the back that's helping cover her in the heart region, though she does have one hand down to suggest that she is sexually interested in men. And her dress gives her a fairly strong foundation, but it again doesn't touch the floor. It doesn't completely ground her. So she as a character can be pulled a little bit from the winds, you might say. We don't see a terribly wide stance. She's got a little bit of a stance, but she's not a weakling by any means, but she can be swayed somewhat. Now, this is Blanche from A Streetcar Named Desire. About the middle of the play, Blanche reaches her birthday party, the point in the play where she feels she has conquered. She feels she has covered her past entirely, and her past was a past of sexual immorality, and she's now white and pure. She's gotten rid of that, but you will notice there's still a stain in the beads of her dress. There's a part of her past she can't get rid of. But she holds her head up high. She is going somewhat with the flow, her own flow, and yet her head is turned because while she might go with the flow of her society, she is slightly off on the way she follows that. We also would say that she looks down on the world, therefore we're seeing her with her head held high. Her hands are down both in the sexual region because it's her sexual past that is her secret, and she's got all of her hands turned away from us. And one hand is completely gone, so we don't even know what it's doing. And her foundation is very weak. So while she might believe that she's got true power, she doesn't have enough strength to hold that for much longer. This is Mother Hicks from the play Mother Hicks, a woman who is everyone in the community believes is a witch, and we'll have to find out from the play whether that's true or not. Notice that she has a lot of the same kind of stance that we see in Blanche. Both of them are both going one direction and their heads turned the other way. Mother Hicks is even more so turned away. And the more it's turned, the more we feel there's a little privacy there and there's a little less revealing of her as a character. She's also more covered up, you might say. Her hand is also protecting her heart region, and the other one is trying to decide where it's going to actually go. It's kind of in between her heart and her strength or sexual region, and her dress also doesn't all the way to get to the floor. So her foundation is somewhat malleable, you might say. Then we drop to a character like Othello, Yago. Here he is. Please note that he has finished his progression. Our other characters are on the left side of their paper, so there's progression. There's places they could go as a character. But Yago is totally at the very end of his paper, and while he may appear to be going with the flow, he is not anywhere near that because he's a double-faced person. He is very much covered up. He's using hats, he's using all sorts of devices to keep himself camouflaged, but there is division between his head and his heart. What he says may not be what he really believes, and underneath in all of his cuts, there is blood, you can see, coming underneath. He is a philosophizer, his hand is in that region, and there's another one that is at his gut for what he believes in and what he's camouflaging. And his foundation is kind of in between. While he may think he has a strong foundation, he's going to be discovered and he's going to be found out. I hope this helps in figuring out some of the characters and what some of the renderings can actually do for us then by positioning the character and talking about the character. It'll be fun for you to play with some of these and interpret some of your characters. We'll talk about putting the clothes on them and finishing off and getting renderings like this later on.